a lot of opinions from multiple sources that are not necessarily in line with a faith-based perspective.
As friends, we often chat about many current topics and relationship issues.
Lend your ear and peep into our private conversation.
Welcome to Realistic Conversations,
A platonic perspective with Kay and Ryan. Hey, what's going on, Ryan? It's been a minute.
What's going on? What's going on? I know I hear from you in a while. What happened? You
Well,
find another platonic friend?
No new friends, remember? No, you know me, been busy, but doing well.
Oh, okay. You know me. Work. I always say, just like Rihanna, work.
Yep, make that money, make that money. So you had a good week overall?
Yeah, the week was good. The week was great. You know, my job was fulfilling, so thank God.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
That
how
is
was
a
yours?
blessing. It was really good. Really
Okay.
good. I actually did meet some new friends. I use the word friends loosely.
Okay, you meet new friends or you meet new people?
I met new people.
Oh,
They were friendly.
oh man, I can't be replaced.
Oh, here we go. Nobody's competing again.
Uh, all right. So how was your day today?
The day was good. And actually, I was saying that I met some new people that were
Uh-huh.
friendly, and we actually got into a conversation. And
Uh-oh.
it was really interesting because, of course, for whatever reason, you get a group of people in the room, and somehow the conversation and topic of relationships come up. And it was cool because we had a couple of senior men in the room, and I felt like I was on the Inquisition table because they were shooting so many questions to me as a single woman in the room. So they had all these questions on why people are still struggling with relationships. And one older man in his 60s, his question to me was, why are his sons still single, 30 and 35?
Yeah, dudes are chilling, living a life, living a dream.
Living the dream without a wife and kids.
I mean, that's not everybody's dream.
True, true. But I also thought that that wasn't a question that I could answer for his kids.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a rough question, right? Because it all depends what their priorities are at 30 and 30. Listen, a lot of us don't even know who we are at 30 and 35.
Mm.
Still trying to figure ourselves out.
Yeah, and he did admit that he thinks that his generation did a poor job at pouring into nurturing the younger men so that they would know what it is to be a man at 30, 35. But I also told him that it could be that his sons are prolonging relationship because of their past experiences. A lot of men these days are really not making marriage a priority. And some of it is because of pain and hurt in the past.
Just man?
Well, the conversation happened to be about his boys. So that's why we were talking about men and the baggage that they often carry.
I like how you smile when you say men and that they often carry.
I didn't know I was smiling.
Ah, man. I mean, look, and men could say the same thing too, right? Men, a lot of men have experienced baby mama trauma, so a lot of dudes are like kind of hesitant.
Hmm.
But talking about baggage, I once told a person I didn't have no baggage, and they broke down to me what baggage was. So for me, I thought baggage was just, baby mama trauma or the crazy ex-girlfriend. But I also thought that that was something that would seep into your current or present relationship,
Okay.
and it can affect it negatively.
Mm-hmm.
I come to find out the person broke it down to me and says that really and truly baggage is any unresolved issues you have had
Yep.
from the past.
100%.
100%, right? So the older dude that said men from his generation did a poor job, and that is true because there were a lot of absentee fathers.
That is true. With these men, they all had their fathers, right? But when we say absentee fathers, I think a lot of times we make the assumption that the men are in the home. But absentee fathers could be that the man is in the home, but he's not emotionally present. So he actually had shared a story about when he told his father that he was getting married, and his father was pretty much non-responsive. And then maybe like a week later, he came back to give him his advice on
Mm-hmm.
marriage. And it was so limited. It was basically, well, I think you'll be ready to get a wife when you have a house. And that was his words of wisdom on the complete subject of marriage.
But can you blame him? Because his father never taught him. You
Well,
know, now go. I was saying, right? For me, as a father, and I know this may sound terrible, so I do a little self-disclosure. It felt weird for me to tell my son, "I love you."
mm, weird, unnatural.
On unnatural,
Okay.
because my father have never said to me, "I love you."
Mm,
Right? And growing up in a society where men's supposed to be tough and providers, and I never had that
okay.
until someone had told me, when was the last time you ever told your son I love you? And that was the last time. I never did because I thought going to work, providing, and paying bills was enough.
So let me ask you this. You have a
Yeah.
daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have the same experience where you thought it was weird to tell your daughter I
No,
loved you? No.
no.
Okay. Okay.
Because we were taught to protect our daughters, right? So finally I did. The first time it felt weird, but then I continued doing it, continued doing it. Now I could hug him, say I love you, and he says, Dad, I love you too. And it has been a blessing.
Mm,
It has been a blessing. I always say to him, don't be afraid to come and tell me things that concern you emotionally. So we have built that bond where he could actually come and talk to me and cry if you need to.
that's amazing.
And don't feel less than.
So that's really beautiful because not only can he come to you, but he can be emotional with
Yes.
you, right? And he can share his feelings. So, one
Mm,
of the things that I brought up when we were talking today is that a lot of times men necessarily don't always move the way they would in future relationships because of their first experience in relationship with heartbreak. And when they go through that, they're not taught to
I was one
share
of
their
them.
emotions. When you
You stuttering.
go go ahead.
You stuttering.
You want me to finish, or you want to tell your story about your
You
first
can, you
heartbreak?
can, you can finish. I'm not gonna go in detail, but you can finish.
It feels like you want to go in detail.
No, go ahead, go ahead, go
It
ahead.
seems like you want to let go
I've
of
been
the
let go.
baggage right now.
I've been let go. All right,
So,
so let me say. So when I got my first heartbreak, oh man, it was devastating, right? And I held on to that for a while. I would say years until I remember doing a little self-reflection. I always tell this story. On my 25th birthday was my self-reflective conversation. And I was home by myself. Um, and I was like, yo, I can't continue. I said, every woman that I have met, we're all, they're all strangers to each other. No one knew each other. And I said, they all can't tell me the same lie.
which was
No, I'm saying they all couldn't tell me, they all tell me the same thing about me being emotionally disconnected,
oh, okay,
not
okay,
allowing them to come in because I was protecting myself. All right. So
yep,
I said to myself, these different women cannot be telling me the same lie.
that's good.
There have to be some truth in what they're telling me. So on my 25th birthday was when I was like, you know what? Now let me begin to let go of my baggage.
That is huge,
Yes.
especially for 25. That is
25 years.
beautiful.
At
It
25, I had it going on at 25. I lived by myself. had a good job, had my own house, but I was living a horrible life.
But the key is you had that self-talk,
Yes.
right? And you were transparent with yourself, vulnerable to say, listen, wherever I'm going in these relationships, I'm the only common denominator.
Yep.
So I was telling this older man that unfortunately, because men aren't taught like women to face your emotions, talk through your pain, find different ways to figure out what lessons you can learn from heartbreak and then move on and try again. Just like you, they hold on to that one experience of that first pain and not heartbreak. And because they're not taught to deal with those emotions, they bottle it all up. They shove it down. They hold on to it and they never want to go through that again. So then when they meet that next relationship, that next person, they give 50% or less. And some of the men in the room said that they definitely can relate to giving less than 50%.
But there's a flip side. There's definitely a flip side. When a man expresses his feelings, sometimes some women like, this dude is too emotional for me.
Unfortunately, the issue is not the guy at that time. Unfortunately, the issue can be the woman who's also has the same problem with baggage and they're never ever going to love again the way that they did. I have a friend who doesn't respect men who cry.
That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Crazy, but she literally has an issue with men who cry. But
But
I've talked to her about it. I said the issue is not the men who are emoting. The issue is you not being able to have compassion for that man who's being vulnerable.
was it Case that had a song, What's a Man to Do?
Ooh,
Was it Case that said, What's a man to do?
I don't
What's
know
a
that
man to
song.
do? What's a man to do when he opens up to his woman in a vulnerable state and she's like, yo, man up.
Sing it.
Evan was so cut, maybe.
So unfortunately, right, what happens is everybody's walking around trying to get to the next relationship that they want to be better than the last one, but nobody's given 100% necessarily all the time.
Well, not necessarily 100%, right? No one has really, really, really dealt with those unresolved issues, right? It's easier to say it's not me, it's them, and move on to the next. So that was what happened with me, right? It's not me, it's them. I'll go to the next. It's not me, it's her. I'll go to the next. It's not me, it's her. Eventually, I was like, nah, it has to be me.
So,
Right?
did you have that self reflective conversation because you were reaching a milestone age, or was it because you realized none of this is working?
It wasn't really about working because I wasn't really looking for a relationship. It was just that, one of those days I woke up, I was downstairs just chilling, and the thought just came, probably the Holy Spirit trying to tell me, listen, you got to do better, right? So I began to realize that, yo, there's so many women that I had crying and all kind of nonsense because of the things I was just cold. There was a ice box where my heart used to be.
Wow.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
was cold. So then I was like, I can't be like this all the time. So I eventually stopped. And when I stopped, I won't necessarily say I didn't necessarily went into a relationship, but my relation, I would say a serious relationship or a committed relationship. But my relationship with the opposite sex became so much better. It was unbelievable.
That's really good. But you know what's funny for me is that I had baggage too, but my baggage wasn't from heartbreak. My baggage was from the dissolution of my parents' marriage. So my approach to relationship was you are not going to cause heartbreak. So I'll get you before you can get me.
Right.
So a lot of my friends used to call me a player, but it wasn't necessarily that I was trying to play men. It was that I was being protective.
or you was preventing from being played.
Yeah. That wasn't gonna happen.
Hmm. You know, and also because I asked the person, okay, so what if I have resolved my issues, but the person that I had my previous relationship have not resolved the issues, and I was beginning to creep into my current relationship, is that still considered baggage?
It can, yeah, to the new person that you're with.
That's what the person told me. To the person that you're with, that's still considered baggage. Even though I might be over it and there's no bickering back and forth, but if that person sees, well, nah, yada, 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 yada,
Mm-hmm.
and they start to bring that baggage into your relationship, that's why I think it's very important to do some self-reflection before you go from one relationship to the next and
I,
resolve all issues.
resolution is key.
Yes.
So remember, I told you about one guy where he and his former partner did not speak at all. And for me, that was a deal breaker because I was really hesitant about moving forward when someone doesn't have resolution from their past. Because that unhealthy relationship at some point is going to spill over into our relationship. And I was not having that.
Yep. I've experienced something similar too. I met a young lady and I was like, oh, so you don't talk to your ex? And she's like, nah, we don't talk. If we have to
Mm.
talk, he calls my mother. I was like, we're not going to last.
Hey, why did you say that?
Huh? Past experiences.
Okay.
And guess what?
It didn't last.
It didn't last.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you have unresolved issues, you really can't move on because that unresolved issue is like a monkey on your back. No matter where you go, you can't shake it.
And then you're using the experience you had with that last person to tread softly with the new person. I'm like, listen, you can't use what we would say one man's fat to fry another. Just because someone moved that way before doesn't mean that every woman moves that way. So you have to look at each relationship as its own individual relationship and experience.
And I have also met females where, in just general conversation, who has been so, I don't want to say bitter, but trying to find a better word.
That's the word.
But that's the word. They've been so bitter. It's like, my next relationship, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. So I was like, so are you telling me it's fair for the next guy to have to pay for what your ex did when he had nothing to do with it?
Yep. Men do it wonderfully.
I know, I think we all do it wonderfully.
Yeah, but I do think, like I said, because women have more conditioning to acknowledge their feelings, their pain, their hurt, women get over things like heartbreak and affairs typically a lot easier than men. I was even talking to a friend earlier and we were talking about deal breakers in relationships. And I asked him, is cheating a deal breaker? And he said the first thing that came to his mind was a visual of his wife cheating.
What position?
And he was like, yeah, not for me. He said, nope, can't do it. And like, I think most women would not at all want to participate in being in a relationship where the person steps out. But most women do forgive and stay in the relationship. Now, how they show up afterwards may not be the healthiest, but they typically don't leave right away, is my point.
Yeah, but from a man's perspective and from my experiences, women don't really get over it that easy.
I didn't say they got over it easy. I said they get over it more than easier than men.
I would say yes, they do easier than men because with men, our is attached to an ego, right? that pain is not just emotional scarring. That's like, as a man, it's like, man,
It's disrespect.
it's disrespect, right? So, but for a woman, I can't speak from a woman's perspective, but from listening to my female friends, is like, I did this, I did that, I did this. How dare he? So I'm not going to make those mistakes again. Instead of seeing where she may have went wrong or where the relationship went wrong, they just chuck it up to me like, you know what? I'm not gonna go through this again. The next guy going, I'm not doing this. The next, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that.
So I think that's true if you're not married. But if you're married and there's infidelity and the woman stays, then the emotional commitment changes a little bit. It wavers,
Yes.
but they don't necessarily walk away, is my point. They give them a second. That whole song, Stand By Your Man, who's that? Dolly Parton, right?
You sing it.
No.
So Alina had asked me, do I have any deal breakers? So I was like, and she was like, you don't? I was like, let me think. So I said to her, disrespect would be a deal breaker for me. So
Which
she was
is
like,
probably shocking to her.
it was. And she said, so that means I could cheat on you? So I was like, and she was like, you gotta think about it. I was like, no, no, let me think, let me think. I was like, I think the disrespect is more than the cheating.
That's big.
And she said to me, well, why is that? And I was like, listen, if you cheat on me, just make sure the guy's better than me. So she was like, better than you. She's like, so you'll take me back? I was like, you never know. I said, but you're gonna have to work hard to regain my trust. And then she was like, so I could cheat on you? So I said to her, you're going to have to work hard to regain my trust. And she was like, it caught her off guard. And I was like, do you know what? I said, do you know why cheating would not be a deal breaker for me? She says, why? I said, because I never think of you as a cheater.
Oh, okay.
And that's the same response she gave me. She says, oh, okay. I was like, yeah. I said, if I thought of you as a cheater, we would never be together.
That's
So,
true.
yeah. So I say for me, in our marriage, if it is a constant disrespect, nah, I'm not taking it.
So, sadly or not, it depends on your perspective. Cheating is not a deal breaker for me. And the reason is maybe, unfortunately, I do expect some men might cheat eventually at some point in time. Would I date someone who I think is a cheater? Absolutely no. Would I marry someone who I think has the capability? No. But I do know that the
Happens.
reality of life, men struggle in that area more than women, I believe. Um, now, my deal breaker though for cheating would be I need to know from my spouse. I don't want to find out because the other woman called me up or my friends saw my husband out and about or my man somewhere else. No, if you respect, going back to the respect thing, if you respect and love me enough, then I think that you should be the one to say, I made a mistake and stepped out. Now, if you don't feel like it was a mistake, and then that would just yield in us moving forward with parting ways. So for me, cheating is not a deal breaker either. But I do think that some of the baggage, like you talked about earlier from other relationships, if it's not resolved, it can lead to cheating in relationships.
Mm.
And when we think about cheating, we all talk about just physical, right? What about that emotional infidelity?
Yo,
What about, go ahead.
I heard I heard about emotional infidelity recently, right? And I was like, what the hell is that?
Really?
Yes. And then Elena had to explain it to me. When you're, well, from a woman's perspective, and her man is emotionally attached to another woman, sharing all of his emotions. And I was like, wow, okay.
So funny enough, I had a friend, I have a friend who's married, right? And a couple of years ago, that friend was calling me a lot,
Mm.
multiple times a day. So we went from talking once a week to maybe twice a week to multiple times a day. And I was not comfortable with it. So I told another friend, I think that my friend's marriage is in trouble. The conversations weren't about the marriage. It was generic conversations, but it was a lot of it. And I felt like I was too emotionally connected to my friend. And the other guy was like, no, you're overthinking things. You know, y'all try to tell me I'm overthinking things all the time. But no, my analysis and my assessment was correct.
Your analysis paralysis.
I wasn't paralyzed this time. I was right. They were having problems in the relationship. So the day-to-day stuff that was happening in his life, instead of calling his spouse because of the issues, he didn't feel like he wanted to talk to her. He's calling his friend.
Yeah, and as married people, we have to be very careful with that too, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I know I might call a friend to vent,
Mm-hmm.
but one day the Holy Spirit said to me, whenever you want to vent, you need to discuss this with your wife.
That's right. That's right.
Right. And sometimes, I just might ask a friend to give me a different perspective because, I only see things Ryan's way. But I had to realize with that is, listen, I can't call my friend all the time. Oh, and by the way, thank God we talk like once every other week. So it's not me.
Why is that thanking God?
Because people might think me emotionally attached.
I have no emotions for you.
Right. So I was saying that the Holy Spirit said to me, if you have an issue with your wife, you need to discuss it with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing it, right? Let me, talk to you for a second. This is how I'm feeling, and this is what I realize is going on. And that's a growth process because
Yes.
I'm a great communicator, right?
But
So
that's
that's
awesome.
right. So, yeah. So baggage is a serious thing because I think I told you before. I always say, in a relationship, two halves don't make a whole.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I say in mathematics, two halves make a whole, but in a relationship, two halves make a disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the thing is, if you're going in a relationship 50% like the men who are hurt or a woman who's hurt, don't do it. And you can't look for another person to make you whole either or to complete you. Only Christ could do that. So the thing is, my belief from my experiences in life is if you have a breakup, whether it's a mutual breakup or it was a horrible breakup, make sure that you heal first, that you can give your all to the next person. And of course, right, you might have some trust issues or some reservations, but time will reveal what you need to see.
So I totally agree. You have some people, though, who think the healing process means moving on to another person.
Yeah, and that's not always the case.
That's usually never the case.
Yeah.
You're
Well, no,
not
some people might
addressing.
say, I'm just saying, some people might say, I'm healed now, so I could look for a relationship. But yeah, it doesn't work like that all the time.
Because there has to be some self-reflection, like in the example you gave, self-reflection into what was going on in this relationship, why I didn't see that we weren't on the same page. Self-reflection, am I choosing the same type of person but in a different body? Self-reflection, do you have some underlying views of relationships, why you're moving this way or allowing certain things. I have some male friends that some of the women they choose, and I specifically say male friends because I'm giving the opposite perspective.
Mhm.
Some of the women they choose, and then they're shocked that they're hurt. Sorry. Sorry, y'all. I don't understand.
Yeah, I feel the same way too. Some dudes who I know marry a particular woman and she's not their type, and
Oh,
then
wait.
they begin to complain. I was
They're
like,
not their type. So usually I see guys do that when they are focused on growth, though.
Well, no, when I say not their type, right? Like it's not the typical person they would be with, but
Mm-hmm.
because of circumstances, they're together. There's a difference between you have growth and maturation, and you realize that your way of choosing a partner was just it could be shallow
Mm-hmm.
versus because of circumstances, you're going to deal with this person for now. Even though you know that you're not, this person is not who you will physically or emotionally go for.
So are you talking about like the dude who needs a place to stay? That is terrible.
It's horrible, but I've met dudes like that,
Yeah, I know.
and they give you justification why he's going to work.
And the justification is stability. They just won't say it.
They won't say it. They
Ridiculous.
won't say they're using the woman. And the moment the lady may say or do something, oh, it gets on their nerves like instantaneously. Right. So there's a difference between using a person versus, you know what? I've always thought this way about women. I've always felt this way about relationships.
Mm.
Then, you did some self-reflection. You realize where your weaknesses or your shortcomings were. And you say, you know what? Let me be more open-minded. Or this time, let the Holy Spirit lead me to where God would want me to be.
That's good. And I also have seen where the guy with the baggage and the hurt and the pain ended up in a relationship with a woman who did nothing but pour into him despite the blockers. And because she kept pouring into him and showing him unconditional love, he finally let go and poured completely into her, and they have a beautiful family. But I always tell her that I admire her and respect her to the bone.
So fruits of the spirit, long suffering.
It was long suffering. And I learned from that. I learned it's not for me, but I learned.
I thought you were going to say you learn patience, grace, and mercy.
I learned patience, grace, and mercy in other ways. I loved it. I loved seeing it all develop right before my eyes. But it wasn't for me. God knows.
Oh,
God knows how much we can bear.
Word. Listen, I appreciate our conversation, right? Because I actually see the growth in both of us.
Woo! Won't he do it?
Like my mother always say, there is a God.
Yes, there is.
Yeah. Well, on that note, okay, I gotta go.
All righty.
Listen, thank you for the laugh.
The jokes are all on me tonight.
Yo, enjoy the rest of the evening. Enjoy
I
the
will.
rest of the week, and we can talk later.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to this week's conversation.
If you like what you heard and want to listen to what we chat about next, please look for Realistic Conversation Podcast on all streaming platforms.
And if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and peep into our next episode by clicking the subscribe button. You'll then be notified of when we post next. See you soon.